Are you looking for art that inspires and gives back? Check out Artery Inc., a Milwaukee-based, woman-owned company blending anatomical art with purpose. From tees to stickers, their designs celebrate the human body and support real causes. Right now, shop the End Violence in Healthcare campaign, made in partnership with PulseCheck Wisconsin. Proceeds help raise awareness and push for safer workplaces for healthcare workers. Visit arteryinc.com and wear your support with pride. That's arteryinc.com. Art, wellness, and action. Welcome to PulseCheck Wisconsin. Welcome to PulseCheck Wisconsin. Today we are joined by Representative Francesca Hong. She's been a chef, a small business owner, legislator, mom, and now she is a candidate for governor for the state of Wisconsin. So Fran, thanks so much for being with us here today.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me on, Chris.
Absolutely. So, I haven't seen you in person in a while, but I feel like I've seen you almost every day. I've seen ads on Instagram, everywhere online. I've seen you traveling all over the state of Wisconsin, sharing your stories. You've been here in Milwaukee, you've been in Madison, you've been as far north as Stevens Point, and some have even coined you even Superior. So you're going even further than before. So, some have coined you as Wisconsin's Mamdani now with how much support and momentum that you have going on. How's the campaign going so far? And why is it so crucial for you to be doing this tour right now?
We are a grassroots movement. We're a campaign that is people-powered, which means that it is important that we are doing everything and that we are everywhere. And I think that our message about permanent affordability and ensuring that we have a Wisconsin that works for everyone is resonating, whether you're in Rhinelander and Wisconsin Rapids or La Crosse or Beloit. And so the campaign trail has been really rewarding. I think it's a privilege to be able to travel this state. It's a pretty great one.
Yeah. And, a lot is going on the home front here in Wisconsin, a lot going on the national front too. Like you said, I feel like a lot of people are resonating with your messaging and resonating with, just being there, being in person to help talk over some of these things that are going down right now in the state of Wisconsin and throughout the country.
We want folks to know that we are listening, but it's also important to present solutions. And I think that is what makes our campaign so strong, is that we have over 1,500 volunteers signed up for our campaign. And a lot of these folks are sharing their talents and their time. And we've got a lot of people who are committed to policy and holding us accountable to have an agenda that is comprehensive and that presents solutions. And we aim to deliver on those.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into that policy. Here at PulseCheck Wisconsin, we like to focus on a lot of the stakes that are up, for healthcare in general. So let's jump into the state of healthcare in the state of Wisconsin. There's been a lot going on. You've had it from both sides, looking at it as a candidate for governor as well as a legislator. What do you see as the most urgent gaps in healthcare across the state of Wisconsin, especially for working families, especially for marginalized communities and rural areas as well?
People can't afford healthcare. We're seeing hospitals close and a fascist government at the federal level that is hell-bent on endorsing mass suffering and mass murder. We're on the brink of a healthcare catastrophe with folks who are on the ACA with those subsidies not being extended. People are seeing their premiums go up 200%, 300%, 400%. We also have a crisis of healthcare workers and care workers where we don't have a pipeline. These are some of the, these are some of the positions that require the most mental and emotional energy. And besides affordability and accessibility, it is care that is lacking for healthcare workers and care that is lacking for working people across the state.
Mm-hmm. And I know, I've been there. I've been in a situation where I haven't had healthcare insurance, or I've had premiums that have been really, really high right after I finished college, right? How has your lived experiences as a small business owner, for instance, and as an advocate for the working class, how has that shaped the lens through which you view healthcare access and affordability here in the state?
You have to make choices that no one should have to. I remember going to work sick as a line cook because I didn't want to lose any hours. But it was at, you know, it was with a lot of fear that if I had one accident, if I had to go to the emergency room, that I would have hundreds of dollars that I couldn't afford to pay for that care. Within our first year of being open at the restaurant, we were facing hundreds and thousands of dollars that we could not afford to ensure that our full-time employees and our part-time employees had access to healthcare. And so for people to have to choose between, taking care of themselves and going to the doctor and working while sick, it's pretty absurd.
hmm And we discussed this on another podcast I was on, and we talked about the stipend that you're hearing about at the federal level, right? And so how they're going to give people access to a couple $1,000s, and that should be it. And go figure out. I don't think people understand, like you spoke to, Fran, how much of an expense that accrues, how you are one accident away, even if you're at work, right? You fall at work, you go to the emergency department. These are thousands of dollars. So that stipend that you're getting from the federal government or whatever, that's going to be nothing in comparison to the backbreaking expenses that families will accrue who are working class throughout this state and throughout the country.
We're seeing, rising costs from rent to utilities, education, childcare, and then to add healthcare premiums that may take up 30, 40, 50, even more percentage of what folks are bringing in, to have to choose between care and rent and education and going to work. These are becoming impossible choices, and politicians are deeply out of touch to think that providing a stipend is going to be enough for folks to be able to take care of themselves. And it's ignoring the fact that this is a systemic issue, right? That our healthcare system is on the brink. And there is, from public health departments to rural hospital clinics, rural hospitals closing, the access to care that is becoming more and more difficult. People are just going to keep getting sicker. And we have a government right now that is fully endorsing it and will continue to make it worse.
And just that point, speaking of making it worse, we've seen at the end of 2025 going into, the first couple of days of this year, we've seen this wave of GOP-backed bills, specifically here in the state of Wisconsin, targeting reproductive freedoms, right? Could you, for our listeners, describe the current reality of reproductive rights in the state of Wisconsin?
So there is an 1849 constitutional ban on abortion, but with the state Supreme Court ruling this past year, reproductive services have resumed in clinics across the state. However, with the passage of the federal Big Ugly Bill, a lot of reproductive health care providers are concerned that providing vital health care for women and pregnant people may actually result in, additional consequences for them. They don't know if it's compliant with the law because we may not have this coverage for folks who are on Medicaid. And so abortion freedom, reproductive freedom, is not just freedom for people who get pregnant and women. This impacts freedoms for everyone. If you have a government that is dictating what to do with your body, this isn't just going to impact people who get pregnant. This is going to impact families across the state. Here in Wisconsin, as you said, we're seeing a slew of Republican bills, everything from, catch nets to saying that abortion pills are going to poison the water, to making abortion care more and more inaccessible. It's an attack on our freedoms, and it's also a distraction from the fact that it is the Republicans' responsibility and their choice to make healthcare inaccessible for working people all across the state.
We're putting politics into healthcare when, you don't want your legislator in the room with your doctor and the patient. That's it, right? Like that is the gist of what we're doing today. And by injecting this, in most cases, this is pseudoscience, right? Like you said, they brought up the point of, these pills are going to get into the water system. Kristen Lyerly just had a piece on where she completely debunked that. So I'll definitely link that for our listeners too. But it's just insanity, the lengths that where we're going. And it's seemingly pulling at straws at this point in time to make any connection possible.
Because I don't want to take the blame. And so they're distracting folks with these myths, these lies about reproductive health care and why people, they complain about quote unquote big government, I don't know what's bigger government than having a politician dictate decisions for you that should be between you and your doctor.
Absolutely.
I would say it's a complete invasion of privacy and an attack on our freedoms.
Absolutely. If you were governor today, what immediate steps would you take, either legislatively or through executive action, to protect and expand reproductive health care? Because I don't think people understand the role of governor here in the state of Wisconsin and how important it is to have the ability to have that executive action available still.
We have to repeal the 1849 abortion ban. I mean, that is first and foremost. We also have to expand Badger Care and move towards Badger Care for all. We're one of 10 states that has not taken the federal Medicaid expansion, and that is going to increase care for a lot of women across the state. We also have not extended postpartum Medicaid. And so we are taking away care for mothers and babies in some of the most important part of birth, right? After you give birth and the year afterwards for postpartum care. So there is a lot that we have to do right away, but I think repealing that abortion ban and ensuring that we are expanding healthcare access for mothers and babies is going to be key, and building up more resilient healthcare system specifically for reproductive health care.
What, in your opinion, why has expansion stalled for so long? Like, what is standing in the way here in the state of Wisconsin? Milwaukee, we need your voice. The Medical College of Wisconsin is conducting a research study to better understand the experiences of young Black men with police in our city and how those experiences impact mental health. If you're a Black man between 18 and 30, including transgender men and non-binary individuals assigned male at birth, we want to hear from you. This is a one-time confidential interview where you share your story, help shape solutions, and get $75 for your time. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Let's work together to improve mental health and policing in Milwaukee. For more information or to sign up, call or text 414-436-6568. Again, that's 414-436-6568. This is your chance to be heard. Let's make a difference together.
Robin Voss. The Speaker of the Assembly has much more control than I think folks understand. And he is focused on maintaining control of people's lives across Wisconsin, and he is hell-bent on ensuring that there is, quote-unquote, no expanding welfare. There is a role in government to ensure that its citizens are protected and that people have access to basic needs, which include healthcare, education, food, and housing. And Robin Voss is the reason why we have not expanded postpartum Medicaid. He is the reason that we have not expanded Badger Care. And he has promised not to do those things while he is in office. So while there is, a lack of political will from the majority party, and the Republicans hold power in both the Assembly and the Senate, it is one person who is deciding what the state of healthcare is for Wisconsin right now.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think has been harmed the most by this failure to expand Badger Care? Like, what communities in general do you think are going to be the most affected by this?
Lower income and no income communities who are on the margins, where already healthcare access is inaccessible. And again, when I say that expanding Badger Care, Medicaid as it's referred to in Wisconsin, it's a first step. It is going to ensure, hundreds of thousands more people, but we're going to see more folks kicked off their healthcare or not, they might not even choose to have healthcare because it's too expensive to pay for it. Oftentimes it's communities of color. And I think what the healthcare system, who it's impacted the most are actually Black women. We have an abysmal maternal health mortality rate, absurdly high infant mortality rate for Black babies. And we really have left Black women behind when it comes not only to healthcare, but giving them the ability to take care of themselves and their loved ones.
Absolutely. And it's so surprising that Robin Voss, like you said, has been essentially quarterbacking this entire movement against Badger Care expansion because I work in his district, right? Like I work in the ERs in his district, and his constituents are going to be affected adversely as well, right? Like these are things here in the state of Wisconsin that it's been this divide, right, between the urban communities and the rural communities, and we have been doing all that we can to draw those parallels between because those communities are joined at the hip when it comes to these issues of Badger Care expansion. And so you have people who are going to have no recourse. You're going to have nowhere else to go but to those emergency departments to seek that care. And in a lot of cases, it may be miles away for you, right? It may be a situation where you're waiting in the waiting room. I can tell you personally for hours at a time with a condition that can be dangerous for you because you didn't pick up your medications because you didn't have availability for that, right? And so these are people who can least afford it that
Yes.
he's representing. Right. And so, so a lot of people will hear, especially, in these communities, you hear, that African American women are being affected adversely, Hispanic women are being affected adversely, and they shut off. This is everybody. This is the state of Wisconsin that's going to be affected by this. And we got to vote accordingly and we have to act accordingly.
It is absurd and inhumane that folks will have to drive hours to find care, especially in rural communities, and that they have representatives who are choosing to pass laws that will harm them. And so the healthcare catastrophe that we are approaching, it's going to get worse, especially when the gutting of Medicaid is coming in 2027 at the end of this year. It is really incomprehensible that the Republicans in the legislature are choosing to harm their own communities. And it, as you said, it impacts everyone regardless of zip code. So we really have to be, aligned and fighting as one, especially when we have a federal government that continues to undermine public health, that has no problem gutting healthcare from folks. And so the state really has a responsibility to do everything in its power to ensure high quality, affordable healthcare access while investing in the healthcare system as well. And that includes the workforce, that includes making sure that we can keep hospitals open. And I'll also note that we have hospitals across the state that are making massive profits and are not being taxed for it. So how can we use, some of these profits that hospitals are hoarding and not investing back into the communities and helping to use that to lower insurance premiums? And there are ways that we can hold some of these massive corporations, hospitals, accountable.
Mm-hmm. Well, you brought it up earlier, and we talked about it briefly, but with regards to education, in the state of Wisconsin, GOP lawmakers introduced bills to repeal the 400-year veto on school funding and to incentivize school district mergers. So, what do these bills, in your opinion, signal about the direction of public education here in the state of Wisconsin?
They're an absolute abdication of duty and responsibility. It is every kid's constitutional right to have a sound and basic public education. The Republicans have been defunding public education in the state legislature for over 16 years. And what that has resulted in are communities being pit against one another because our school funding formula is tied to property taxes. And so communities having to go to referenda, being forced to raise their own property taxes in order to fund their schools is because it is a direct result of Republicans not funding our public school system. So these bills that they're introducing are aimed to distract and, absolve themselves of
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities. And what defunding public education has done is actually harmed some of our rural communities the most. And we have, 800,000 kids in our state that go to public schools. We know
Right.
that public schools are some of our largest employers in communities. And so undermining the public education system, raising property taxes on folks, and creating even more disparities between students who are living in poverty now and those who are in wealthier neighborhoods. And that's only that impacts everyone as well. These are
Mm-hmm.
intersectional issues, but I think what people need to know the most is that it's a policy choice to defund public education, to harm local economies, but most importantly, it's harming our kids.
Yeah. as governor, how would you pursue an equitable school funding model that supports, rural areas, suburban and urban districts fairly?
I think one of the most important things we have to do is reimburse special education at least 90%. And so every school district is required by law to fund special education needs. But the state right now is reimbursing public schools between 38 and 40%. And what that means is then that we're pitting students against one another in terms of where to put resources. And then we have to look at keeping public dollars in public schools. A lot of the money that should be going to public schools are being siphoned into a voucher program. And we cannot afford to fund two education systems. And so in order for us to make sure that we have strong communities, we need strong public schools, and we need public schools that are adequately funded. So special education reimbursement and fully funding public schools and moving away from a voucher system that, again, families can send their kids to where they want, but to put public tax dollars into private schools that are unaccountable and there's very little transparency. And these schools, there's one in La Crosse, I was just talking to folks today, how they say in their handbook that they don't have to take students who are queer. LGBTQ students. So when I'm talking about unaccountability and lack of transparency, these are schools that can pick their students, not students picking their schools, which means our tax dollars are going to discrimination.
Absolutely. Well, Fred, you've announced you run for governor. You are a front runner. Why this moment? Why did you throw your hat in the ring? And what sets your platform apart from others in this race right now? Because it's a big field, but what sets you apart?
This moment requires a movement and leadership that understands the urgency of this moment. Our platform is on universal policies that will ensure that we can deliver for working class families, universal childcare, fully funded public schools, expanding healthcare access to everyone in our state, and ensuring that we have affordable housing. And so I think it's one thing to say affordability and being against the fascist government. It's another to have an actual plan to enact permanent affordability to make sure that we are not back here. And so being a people-powered campaign where we are taking no corporate PAC money, no APAC money, and we're growing this movement over 1,500 volunteers strong and growing, we are the campaign that is meeting the moment and will create a government that's actually powered by the people, not one that's answering to special interests.
You've been traveling all over the state of Wisconsin. Are there any moments, any interactions with constituents that capture why you're running for governor or really encapsulate why you're doing this?
I met an incredible second grader this morning at the shout out to the Root Note Cafe in La Crosse. And he came with his mom and grandmother and told me that this is about ensuring that people, like this is a second grader, right? That kids like him can have a good life, that government has to help everyone have a good quality of life. And he's absolutely right. He's speaking to the right for everyone to live a life of dignity, for everyone to have a fair shot. He loves his public school. He loves that it's a place, and these are his words, to learn more about the world and my community. Just remarkable, but we owe our kids so much more, and they deserve so much better. And to know that, these kids they're watching us.
Mm-hmm.
They can smell bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
and they're ready for adults to actually take responsibility for their actions. So anytime I get to meet a young person on the trail, and I have to, do a little flex here. It's pretty amazing to see the multi-generational crowds that are coming
Mm-hmm.
out to meet us. 16, 17-year-olds who can't vote yet, but they know that the governor that is elected will be their governor when they are voting age. So they're paying attention. They're asking tough questions. And we need a candidate that's going to build a coalition that is multi-generational, where folks feel excited to vote for a candidate. They don't feel like their options are being taken away when it comes to representation. And so it's meeting young people on the trail that those moments really stick with me.
1 year into the Hong administration, what headline do you hope Wisconsinites are going to wake up to?
The people win. This is, yes, my name is on the ballot, but it's not about me. And what does it mean for people to win? It means economic freedom. It means, more money in your pocket, affordable childcare, fully funded schools. So I think people win, kids win. That's the headline I want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Representative Hong, thank you so much for being here with us. Thanks for, giving our listeners a little bit more detail about your campaign. How can people reach out?
Folks can go to francescahong.com. Follow us on socials at Francesca Hong WI. You can sign up to volunteer. You can check out our entire policy platform, which is growing. We'll be adding to it. Donate and tell folks about our campaign. A lot of folks aren't in the position to donate right now. And I think when we all know that we can make better possible together, that's how a movement starts and that's how a movement works.
Absolutely. Representative Hong, thank you so much for joining Pulse Check Wisconsin. Thanks.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Chris.
As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and if you need me, come and see me.